Welcome back. Now let's talk a bit of economics. Remember one time when, I think it was in the last administration, when they talked about imposing some kind of taxes on luxury goods, and including wines, champagnes and all that. Well, they say there's this proposed move to impose duties on consumer goods manufactured locally, and it's begun to generate. For
those who love wines and spirits,
well,
they may have to pay more.
Okay, but still, this wines and spirit add flavor to life, they say, to meals, to meetings, and all of that. But then there's this idea that for you to enjoy these things, you might need to pay a little bit more. But we're not the ones that are going to tell you how and why that should be or should not be. We have some people in the house. Mr. Mike Olayewaju is the Acting General Secretary of the National Union of Food, Beverage and Tobacco Employees. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Beside him is Mr. Bismarck Ruwani, CEO of Financial Derivatives. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
And E.G. Solomon, Food, Beverage and Tobacco Senior Staff Association.
Good morning. Thank you.
And Chris Omolabi is a legal practitioner.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian.
Welcome. So let's begin with you, Mr. Olayewaju. What's the problem?
Yeah, the problem is the government of the day, they tend to take some policies that are counterproductive and fatally defective to the growth of the economy. What we are actually here for is the fact that we are not against government trying to, improve in revenue generation. It is the work, in fact, the citizens of this country, the labor especially, my constituency, we are not against it. But a situation whereby the government in one way, they're encouraging going all over the world or roadshow trying to encourage investors to invest come and invest in Nigeria, and the already existing companies too are there. I think what they require more is special encouragement and special incentive. But this policy that is being brought up is just coming almost from the moon. We believe that if there should be any need for any increase, such like that, all the stakeholders should have been involved and made to contribute meaningfully before it even come to life. But if you don't act fast, you may get to a situation whereby most of the company will be closing down.
So, what's the increase that's causing this one? Is it so wide?
It is wide, and the manufacturers have already come out to show their displeasure against it. With this kind of increase, we'll probably see people losing their jobs. And you already see this is an industry that is already under stress from the last 2 years. We had to change from imported raw materials to using our own raw materials. And the companies are just getting stable. In fact, the outlook is that towards the end of this year, things should be normal. I can tell you that for us in the last 2 years, we've lost almost 2,000 members. And if they put this
lost as in they lost their jobs.
To redundancy, the companies would have to call us because the cost of doing business is very high. If you have more increase, they have to pay more as taxes. Now you will have more of this, and I don't think it's good for government, because you can't say you want to create jobs at the same time people will be losing jobs.
I know it's an economic thing, so before we bring in the economist, let's hear from the lawyer in terms of like rights and then the laws that are on ground. Is this the right way to go?
Well, I think like Mr. Ribabu said, the comrade, please.
Yes.
He mentioned consultation. I would think, like someone said, you can't shave my head in my absence. They needed to consult with the industry. They needed to find out exactly where they stand and what, if you might call it, this increase will do to the industry. I think it will wipe out the industry. It's also discriminated legally. You shouldn't enact policies which will appear to strengthen one hand while it weakens the other hand. There's been a parity, a historical parity between the beer, the wines and the alcohol sector, the same industry anyway. And it's been at 20%, what they call the hectoliter of the alcohol content. Of course, because the wine and spirits contain more alcohol, therefore they pay a higher rate. So for example, previously you would have 24 naira as the base rate that the beer sector pays. By this new proposal, they'll be going to about 30 in the first year, 35 in the second year, 35 in the third year. But for the wines, it'll be going to 60. It's currently at 60. It will be going to 125. It's huge. Then it will be going to 150 and then 175.
Is it not possible that the government wants to minimize the amount of wine and spirit intakes?
Because some of the reasons given for this is that concerns about health and of course the current economic realities. So if the dollar was 197 and we are now at 305 or so official rate, shouldn't there be some kind of adjustment?
Quite frankly, the government's concerns are that revenue is falling, debt is high, and debt service is increasing. But the problem with this is that empirically everywhere in the world, the lower the tax rate, the higher the compliance, because the incentive to avoid or to evade tax gets higher, the higher the tariff. So the objective is to increase the revenue take and the mobilization rather than increase the rate of taxation. Because we have what they call the incidence of taxation, which is the burden of tax. If the burden is high, it has unintended consequences. So what is happening now is that whatever you do, you must make sure that it achieves the ultimate economic objective. The economic objective today is to sustain the path out of recession. And if you look across the world, whenever there's a recession, what you do first and foremost is to actually reduce taxes, increase spending, so that you can stimulate the economy out of that malaise. In this case, you're imposing taxes. Secondly, taxes, they are what we call the canons of taxation, as espoused by Adam Smith way back. There are 4 canons, and in each case, you must pass the test on 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually, you pass about 3, when that tax then is called positive. 1 is that the tax should be easy to administer. 2 is that it should be neutral. It shouldn't distort the allocation of resources. And 3 is that it should generate revenue. And 4, that it should be fair and progressive. If you look at this tax is a benefit tax, which means that the poor and the rich are going to pay the same amount of tax no matter what. It doesn't tax you based on your ability to pay, right? It taxes you based on the consumption. So, in other words, what we are saying is from a macroeconomic perspective, the country cannot afford not to pay taxes because our tax to GDP ratio is 5%. It's one of the lowest in the world. It's too bad. But tax increases should be modest and should be staggered, and so that you actually begin to impose it after the election, not before the election, because it is not feasible to do that before the election. Secondly, the discrimination between spirits and beers should be more modest, because no matter the higher the tax, the higher the evasion of the excise duty, and you're not going to collect anything. And another fundamental issue is that you do not pay import duty and excise duty at the same time. Import duty is for imported items, and then it stops there. If I import something, like anybody who is importing alcohol or spirits, then you pay the import duty at the port. Then you pay the excise duty again at the factory level. Then it's double jeopardy. It doesn't work. And if you look at alcohol consumption globally, Nigeria's alcohol consumption is one of the lowest. Right? The highest consumption of alcohol, as you can see in the slides there, is in the Czech Republic, where they consume an average of 142 liters a year. The average, to put in perspective, these guys consume an average of 3 jerrycans of alcohol per person every year in Czech Republic. In Africa, the highest consumption is in Gabon, right? Where they consume about 87 liters of alcohol, and that's the average. So some people consume, I want you to imagine that some people consume about 4 or 5 jerrycans of alcohol in a year, an individual. In Nigeria, it's nowhere near that. If not, you would have. So I think that is the point. And the assumption also that spirits are consumed by the rich, and that beer and stout and are consumed by the poor is not a valid argument, because the rich, maybe if champagne is the extreme on the other end, but if you look at rum and
whiskey.
And you find that the poor actually consume more rum than
the rich.
And the alcohol content in rum is something like almost 40%.
41%.
Why 41%? While the alcohol content in beer is about 5%.